Have you ever thought about how your habits define you? I mean, really thought about it? What if that's more literally true than we imagine? Today, we're diving into this incredible idea, how every single thing you do on repeat, no matter how small, is actually sculpting your character and carving out the path of your future.
So, we've all heard that saying, right? Practice makes perfect. But have you ever really stopped to wonder why that's true? What's the actual mechanism behind it? Turns out there's an ancient law of the mind that explains it all. And it's not just for learning an instrument, but for everything, becoming kinder, wiser, or even more anxious. Let's dig in. All right, so let's start with the first piece of the puzzle, something we can all recognize in our own lives, the undeniable, kind of scary power of repetition. Before we get into the ancient law, let's just look at how this plays out, moment by moment. Think about it like this. Every time you worry, you're literally practicing how to worry. You're making it just a little bit easier for the next worried thought to pop up. But on the flip side, every time you act with generosity, you're rehearsing generosity, which makes it more likely you'll be generous next time. Each moment is conditioning the next one, for better or for worse. And you know what? This isn't some new age idea. Nope. It's an ancient law of the mind, something that was mapped out in early Buddhist psychology. It has a name. It's called Asevana Paccayo, and it is the engine that drives every single habit you have. So what is this thing, Asevana Paccayo? Asevana basically means repetition or even infusion. It's this natural law that says a mental state, like kindness or anger, it doesn't just vanish. It leaves behind a little echo, a subtle bit of strength, making it easier for a similar thought or feeling to show up again. It's like our mind prefers to walk on a well-worn path, a path that we ourselves carved with our past actions. There's this really beautiful analogy they use to explain it. Think about putting perfume on a piece of cloth. One single spritz might fade away, but if you do it day after day, that scent starts to infuse the fabric itself. It becomes part of the cloth. Well, our actions are like that perfume. Repeat them enough, and they stop being just things we do, and they become part of who we are. Here's another way to picture it. Imagine it's a sweltering hot day. You splash a handful of water on your face, feels good for a second, but then you're hot again. It's only when you keep splashing over and over that you really drive the heat out and your body stays cool. It's the same inside. One good deed is great, one moment of mindfulness is awesome, but it's the continuity, the repetition that creates real, lasting change in how we feel. And this brings it right into our everyday lives, stuff we've all experienced. Remember learning to ride a bike or maybe play guitar? That first attempt is just awkward and clumsy. But here's the magic. That clumsy attempt literally makes the second attempt easier. Each repetition paves the way for the next one, making the connection stronger and the whole thing smoother. That is the Asevana in action. So we've got the idea down, but how does this law of repetition really play out on a grander scale? Well, let's look at two incredible stories from the ancient texts that show Asevana shaping not just moments, but entire lifetimes. Our first story is about a young servant girl. Her name was Puna, and here's the thing about her. Despite being in a really low position in life, she had this unbelievable wisdom. It just baffled everyone around her. And the explanation for it? You guessed it. It all comes down to the power of Asevana. So one morning, Puna sees this very respected Brahmin shivering in a cold river, literally trying to wash away his bad deeds. And she just comes out with these incredible words. She cuts right through all the ritual and gets to the heart of it. You can't just wash away the consequences of what you do. The only way to be free of evil is to stop practicing it. This wisdom from a servant girl just stunned the Brahmin. So where on earth did it come from?
Well, the text explained that in a previous life she had been a highly accomplished nun. She was constantly practicing and teaching deep wisdom. That repetition, that asevana, just carried right over, giving her this innate insight in her current life. But, and this is key, she had also practiced arrogance. She looked down on others. And that habit, that repetition, also had its own result, her rebirth in a humble position. Her life was like a perfect map of how our repeated actions, both the good and the bad, shape our destiny.
Okay, so Puna's story shows the long game, how habits play out over lifetimes. This next story, though, it zooms right in on the intense, moment-to-moment struggle against a single, deeply rooted negative habit, being stingy. So there's this poor man, and he only owns one decent cloth to share with his wife. He's listening to the Buddha teach, and this powerful, beautiful urge to give it away just swells up inside him. But then, bam, a second thought. the voice of his lifelong stinginess, fights back. And this internal battle just rages all night long. The desire to be generous comes back again around midnight, but the old habit is just too strong. It isn't until dawn that this new impulse, this new habit of generosity finally wins the fight. He makes the donation, totally exhausted, but triumphant. But here's the kicker. The Buddha later revealed a crucial detail. He said the man's reward for his good deed was actually lessened because of the delay. If he had managed to overcome his old habit back in the evening when the good impulse first came up, the result would have been exponentially greater. That long, drawn-out fight, that was the raw power of Asevana. That was the force of his old, repeated habit pushing back with everything it had against a new, better one. Look, these ancient stories aren't just history lessons. They're mirrors. They point directly at our own lives and at a fundamental choice that we are facing in every single moment. Which brings us to our final section, your path, your choice. The source material we're drawing from today makes a very, very bold claim. It says that when you really look at what people are practicing day in and day out, what they're repeating through Asevana, humanity basically falls into two very different camps. And this is what that division looks like. There's a large group of people who often, without even realizing it, spend their days practicing and strengthening things like greed, anger, and confusion. And then there's a much smaller group who are actively and consciously practicing things like generosity, wisdom, and kindness. They are choosing their habits instead of letting their habits choose. And this is really the bottom line. This law, Asevana, it isn't optional. It's always on, just like gravity. With every thought you have, every word you say, every link you click, you are strengthening a pathway in your mind. You are casting a vote for the person you are going to be. There is no neutral ground here. You are either building up good patterns or not so good ones. So, all of this leaves us with one final, unavoidable question. Right now, in this very moment, you are rehearsing for your future self. The habits you are feeding today are going to absolutely define the person you become tomorrow. The only question left is, what are you choosing to practice?